This is a recording to recap the January 10th, 2025 winter weather event that impacted the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee. It also impacted numerous areas around us, but the focus of this is on the Cumberland Plateau area of Tennessee. So the night before the event on Thursday night, M&M's forecast snow total chances was issued, and 4 to 8 inches was generally expected across the plateau. Now, I then had my percentages there where you see you had a 90% chance of getting 4 inches, 80% chance of 5 inches, 70% chance of 6 inches, and then you go 7, 8, 9. You'll notice that the 7 and the 8, you got a 50-50 shot at 7 and only a 30% shot at 8 with a 10% chance of 9 plus. On the right, you see where my original forecast was 2 to 4. Then it was 3 to 5 as more data came in and we got closer to the event. Then I was able to go to confidently go to 4 to 6. Then I was able to go 4 to 8. But I remember mentioning, I think I mentioned this in a recording, that I was wishing I had stayed 3 to 5 or 4 to 6. I always felt like 4 to 8 might have been just a little much. But then I got to thinking about all the data that showed the robust moisture that would be moving in. And I knew we would have some isolated areas that would have higher totals. So rather than those isolated areas be caught off guard, many of us decided that it was in the public's best interest to go with 4 to 8. One thing we have to pay attention to, though, with these forecasts is the public's perception of what we're forecasting. When we said 4 to 8, a lot of folks fixated on that 8. Even though you see on the percentages there, you had a 70% chance of not getting 8. Making a forecast is extremely complicated, especially when it concerns snow for the Cumberland Plateau. Okay, that's a hard part. The next hard part is communicating that forecast to the public. And then the third hard part is the public's perception of that forecast. What do they hear me say versus what I want them to hear me say? So that's something I have to be very careful. In the end, I should have said 4 to 6 with isolated higher amounts. I think that would have been clearer, and that would have kept more folks from wishing for that 8. Honestly, I don't know why everyone fixated on the higher number. I don't know if there's just something about the number 8. But if everyone had fixated more on the 4, that would have been, it would have gone over a little bit better with folks. But people wanted a deep snow. A lot of folks wanted a deep snow. And when we forecasted 4 to 8, they thought we were going to get the 8. But that's in spite of the fact that those percentages were highest for 4, 5, and 6. And then when you see how my forecast progressed from the beginning to the final, that number 4 is is the same number that shows up in all 4 forecasts, which you would think would mean that folks would think, well, he is definitely confident about that 4. That way, if it doesn't snow as much as he thought it would, that means we're getting at least 3 or 2. But there was a fixation on the number 8. And so when it didn't snow 8 inches, then it was like, well, this was a bust. He totally missed this forecast, even though there was a 70% chance you were not going to get 8. So again, perception of the forecast is always something all meteorologists have to battle. Then there's the complication of the forecast. The atmosphere is like layers of a cake. So you got the snowflake that starts from the base of the cloud. It falls through the atmosphere and falls through various temperatures and moisture levels and until it finally makes it to the ground. Now, our snow dealt with what's called a warm nose. Our system in the Gulf pulled up a bunch of warm air and sent it up into one of the layers of the atmosphere. So that's not uncommon, but it looked like that the bigger impacts from that warm air aloft would only make it as far north as the Tennessee-Alabama border and maybe a county or 2 northward. Okay. So even that morning, it looked more and more like that the sleet mixing in would be much less likely to make it to Cumberland County and possibly could make it to Pikeville, that far north, But in the end, it surged northward and impacted a lot of us. And there's nothing that impacts your snowfall totals worse than sleet. It really cuts those totals down. Cold air is very dense, very heavy. When a system tries to pull up warm air, it's just easier to send that warm air up and over the cold air. And so you get that layer of cold air, then a layer of warm air, and then a layer of cold air on top, just like a cake. So we had to deal with that. And there was also a dry layer of air up there as well. And that's what impacted our morning snowfall. So you probably turned on the radar when you got up that morning and you saw it snowing like crazy, but there wasn't anything happening here at the surface. Had a dry layer of air aloft that was evaporating those snowflakes. So it took a while to moisten up that layer. Down here at the surface, we were moist. I had a 90% humidity level on my weather station that morning. Humidity is highest in the morning here at the surface, okay? But aloft, there was a dry layer of air. And then with that warm layer of air moving in too, it was just a crazy combination going on up above us. This was the weather balloon launch result from Nashville that morning. That's the closest weather balloon launch there is in our neck of the woods. So you see that dry layer of air. Where the red line and the green line are farther apart, that's drier air. So right at about 5,000 feet was a dry layer of air. I should have pulled up the weather balloon launch that morning, and that would have helped me been able to have seen what was going on there a little bit better. But it is what it is. And then as the day goes along, that warm layer at about that same level, if not a little higher, would impact our precip types. And that's why some of you got even some freezing rain mixed in, and some sleet, and different forms of all kinds of different forms of winter precipitation. That had it stayed all snow, we would have been looking at much better snowfall totals area wide. And then the jet stream was very active. That purple shading you see going right over Tennessee, that's a very strong jet stream. So we had a very strong jet stream, had a good area of low pressure on the Gulf Coast, Arctic high pressure over western Pennsylvania, funneling down Arctic air. It was all the perfect combination for a good snow, except for that layer of 2 of atmosphere above us that decided to be a little complicated and put some dry air and even some warmer air up above our heads. Just something to kind of look out for in the future. So things to monitor, you have to watch the track of the low. If we're not north of the low, we're not going to get any snow. Okay, that's just that's a basic rule. Got to watch the dry air at all layers. Got to watch the temperature at the surface and aloft. Got to watch those warm noses. Got to watch the strength of the low pressure. And then the dynamics, which are very complicated. That involves the jet stream, the low pressure, the cold air. That's a whole nother topic all to itself. So yeah, snow forecasts are hard. that is for sure. Thank goodness we have supercomputers to help us with all of this, but even that can lead us down a bumpy road. So remember I showed you the warm nose that was expected across portions of southern middle Tennessee with this event. I said at the tip of that nose is where you'll see enhanced snowfall, and that stretches eastward. And I thought northern Cumberland County and Fentress County would be in that area of enhanced snowfall. But what ended up happening was that warm nose got all discombobulated. And so those of you in Tansy were actually at the tip of one area of the nose. So you all got there your 4 inches or so. And then other areas were at the tip of that, like up around Big South Fork and whatnot, and even northern Fentress County. Some of those folks picked up some decent snowfall totals. So that thing was all over the place. That warm air was just, the atmosphere is like a fluid. We treat it like a fluid in the physics. So because it is like a river, that's why we call the jet stream a river of air. That's why when you see that moisture surging into California, they call it the atmospheric river. I mean, we have all these fluid terms for the atmosphere because that's how we treat it. In the end, it seems like 3 inches is a very common number for snowfall totals across the plateau. If I'd stuck with that 2 to 4 inch forecast, some of you all would have had a little bit less. Some of you all are saying you don't even have 2 inches. You're saying you have like an inch, if that. Every once in a while, somebody will report 5. But generally speaking, it's a 3 inch. I had 2.5 here at the house in northern Cumberland County. So Big South Fork is saying 3. Tansy's 4. Renegade, last I heard, was 3. Mayland had a measurement of 3. And I'm going by the people who send me pictures with the ruler because that is 100%. That's good. So yeah, this was odd. So I would say generally across the plateau, I think we can safely say we had 2 to 4 inches. So if you go by the 4 to 8, you about half that, right? I don't know anyone who got 6, 7, or anything higher than that. So, but anyway, but still a good snow. If we'd have been looking for 2 to 4, we'd be so super excited, wouldn't we? But and I'm still excited. I love it. I've loved my pictures. I've loved seeing the pictures of you all playing out in it, and doing your thing. It is a great snow to make snowballs, go sledding. It's been a great snow. I've got some good pictures, but my goodness, what a complex situation it evolved into once it got into Middle Tennessee. There's still some dynamic stuff I could talk about that would give you a headache. It gives me a headache. It gives anybody a headache, so that I won't go into. But it's in the end, I feel pretty good about how everyone handled this because of the widespread nature of this winter storm. It was huge. At one point, there were winter storm warnings stretching from Texas and Oklahoma all the way to Virginia Beach. So it was a huge storm and very, very complex. And I'll end with this quote from James Spann. This is an opening paragraph in his latest book, and it's perfect. Weather is a relentless opponent. It will bruise and batter you, but also take you on an unforgettable ride of a lifetime. Wrestling with the many mysteries of the Earth's atmosphere brings a never-ending quest for knowledge, teaches humility, and means every day in the weather office is different. And that is for sure. You folks take care and keep looking up. Keep it right here to meteorologistmark.com.